Don't touch me. Preston Vance jerked his hand away and wiped his palm with a cloth napkin, as though he had touched something spoiled. Oh my God. I can still feel it on my skin. The black woman, in the simple navy dress, stood perfectly still. Preston looked around the room with open disgust. Who let her in? Why is she up here? Staff entrance is downstairs. The woman said nothing. She lifted her glass of mineral water and took one slow sip. Preston stepped closer. Why don't you thank me for letting you breathe the same air? She placed the glass back on the bar. Then she looked directly into his eyes. You'll remember my name before this night is over. Preston laughed. He should not have laughed. Because not long after that, the same man would be sitting in front of her with shaking hands, begging for one chance to save everything he had spent his life building. To understand how that happened, you first need to understand who this woman really was. Nia Whitmore lived in a quiet Brooklyn brownstone. She woke before sunrise without an alarm. Her body had been trained by years of discipline. The bedroom was still dark. Outside, the city hummed softly. Old hardwood creaked beneath her bare feet as she walked downstairs and made coffee in a French press. The kitchen filled with the smell of dark roast and cinnamon. As daylight slowly entered through the windows, it touched a row of jasmine plants resting along the sill. They were the same kind her grandmother, Odessa Whitmore, had grown on the porch of a small home in rural Georgia. Nia stood there for a moment with her eyes closed. For a few quiet seconds, she was a little girl again, sitting beside Odessa, watching morning light spread over red clay roads. Listening to the woman who raised her talk about dignity, patience, and knowing when to reveal your strength. Nia touched the thin gold bracelet around her left wrist. It was the only jewelry she wore most days. The bracelet had belonged to Odessa, a sharecropper's daughter, a woman with no fortune, no powerful family name, and no influential connections. After Nia lost both of her parents, Odessa raised her alone. She gave her something far more lasting than money, a sense of dignity that could not be bought, frightened, or bent. Odessa repeated one lesson often. Baby, don't show your cards until you're ready to collect the whole table. Nia never forgot it. Most people had no idea who Nia Whitmore really was. She was the founder and sole majority shareholder of Elevance Global, a Fortune 100 biotechnology and infrastructure conglomerate valued at more than $60 billion. Her personal net worth was more than $4,200 million. She had attended the Massachusetts Institute of Technology on full scholarships. She built her company from a one-room laboratory in Boston using borrowed equipment. Time magazine once placed her face on the cover beneath two words, The Quiet Titan. But looking at Nia, most people would never guess any of that. Her closet was modest. She drove a 5-year-old sport utility vehicle. No personal driver. No entourage. No parade of assistants walking behind her. Sometimes she still answered her own phone. People who worked with her described her the same way. The most powerful person you would never pick out of a crowd. At Elevance Global, Nia walked through the research and development floor like any other employee. White lab coats moved between equipment stations. Centrifuges hummed. The faint chemical smell of reagents hung in the air. She greeted the janitor by name. Gerald. 2 grandchildren. A bad knee. She stopped to ask a laboratory technician how her daughter's soccer tournament had gone. She passed a framed copy of the Time magazine cover without looking at it. That was Nia Whitmore. Quiet, grounded, invisible by choice. The event that changed everything was the Sterling Foundation Annual Gala, one of Manhattan's largest networking events for the business elite. A rooftop venue overlooking Central Park. Candles flickered inside glass holders. Silverware touched porcelain with soft, delicate sounds. The air smelled of expensive cologne, polished stone, and ambition. Nia did not want to attend. She hated galas. She would rather spend the evening reviewing clinical trial data or infrastructure reports. But her executive assistant, Camille Caldwell, had insisted. 3 infrastructure partners will be there. Camille reminded her that one of them had submitted a serious proposal. Including Vance Development? Nia asked. Their chief financial officer submitted a strong package. You should at least make an appearance, Nia sighed. Fine. Not long. She chose a simple navy dress. No diamonds. No designer clutch. No dramatic statement piece. Only Odessa's gold bracelet. Then she walked into a room filled with people who often measured human worth by labels, watches, clothes, and proximity to power. Preston Vance entered the gala like a man convinced the building had been waiting for him. Loud voice, large handshake, hands on shoulders, jokes delivered with the confidence of someone who assumed laughter was guaranteed. His suit cost $12,000. His watch cost more than some people's cars. But behind the performance, Preston was in serious trouble. Vance Development Corporation was 3/4 behind its financial projections. Clients were quietly leaving. Debt was tightening around the company. Bankruptcy had stopped being a distant fear. It was becoming a real possibility. His chief financial officer, Graham Nolan, pulled him aside near the bar. His face was tense. His voice stayed low. Preston, Elevance Global's chief executive, is here. If we land this contract, we survive. If we don't, bankruptcy becomes very real. That's not fear talking. That's the math. Preston took a slow drink of bourbon. Relax, Graham. I'll charm whoever it is. Graham hesitated. Do you even know what the chief executive looks like? Doesn't matter. I can read a room. He could not. Because later, someone casually introduced him to a woman standing alone near the bar. No title, no company name, no formal introduction, only first names. Preston, this is Nia. Nia, Preston. Preston looked at the navy dress, the bare neck, the plain gold bracelet. No visible designer bag, no jewelry announcing wealth, no personal security, no famous entourage. He made a decision about her in less than 2 seconds. Nobody important. That decision would cost him almost everything. Preston looked at Nia the way someone might inspect a package delivered to the wrong address. His eyes travelled from her shoes to her dress, then to the bracelet on her wrist. He did not recognize the designer of the dress, because there was none. He did not see diamonds. He did not see the expensive signals he trusted. He extended his hand only because the person who introduced them was still standing nearby. 2 fingers, barely a handshake. The kind of gesture that says, I'm doing this because someone is watching, not because I respect you. Nia took his hand normally, firm, professional. She gave him a small, polite nod. Respect, given to a stranger simply because that stranger was human. Preston pulled away immediately, as though he had touched something hot. Then came the napkin. He did not wipe his hand discreetly. He did not wait until no one was looking. He reached toward a passing server, took a cloth napkin from a silver tray, and slowly wiped his palm, finger by finger. Deliberate, public. He looked toward the men standing near him to make sure they saw. Don't touch me. Then he raised his voice. God, I can still feel it on my skin. The atmosphere around them changed. Not completely silent. Something worse. Wrong. 2 women at a nearby table stopped speaking. Their wine glasses paused halfway to their mouths. A bartender froze with one hand around a champagne flute. The man who had introduced them stepped backward. Color drained from his face. Even the jazz trio in the corner seemed suddenly farther away. Nia did not move. Her expression did not crack. Her breathing did not change. She stood with sparkling water in one hand as calmly as if she were watching rain through a window. Preston mistook her silence for weakness. That was his second mistake. He turned toward the people around him. 3 men in expensive suits. 1 woman in a red dress. His voice carried because he wanted it to carry. Preston performed in every room he entered. Who let her in? Seriously. This event has a guest list, not an open-door policy. One of the men gave a nervous chuckle. The others stayed quiet. One adjusted his tie. Another checked his watch. Preston took another drink. You know what this is, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Somebody's charity guest wandered upstairs. It happens. People come in, take pictures, drink free champagne, then pretend they belong. Nobody laughed. The air around the group grew heavier. The woman in the red dress looked down at her phone. I need to find my husband. She had arrived alone. Everyone knew it. She walked away quickly anyway. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble. The sound of someone leaving a scene she wanted no part of. Preston barely noticed. The bourbon was warm in his chest. Attention felt good. He loosened his tie slightly, then leaned toward the men who remained. Let me tell you something. We hired a black contractor for a project in New Jersey. The man could barely read a blueprint. We had to redo months of foundation work. It cost us $2 million and months of delays. Preston smiled, waiting for approval. I told my team, next time, let the building do the job itself. At least, concrete doesn't file a discrimination complaint. Silence. One man forced a weak smile and immediately regretted it. Another looked at the floor. The third took a long drink without speaking. The atmosphere had become cold and brittle. Everyone knew Preston had crossed a line. Nobody wanted to be the first person to tell him. And through every insult, every joke, every sneer, Nia Whitmore stood only a short distance away. Close enough to hear everything, every word, every syllable, every assumption. Camille Caldwell stood beside her. Her hand gripped her clutch so tightly that her knuckles turned pale. Her jaw was clenched. Her eyes burned with disbelief and anger. Say the word, Camille whispered. One word and I'll have security escort him out by that $12,000 collar. Nia slowly shook her head. Not yet. Nia. I heard him. All of it. Camille stared at her. Then why are we standing here? Nia lifted her water, took a sip, then set it gently on the bar. Ice touched glass with a soft clink. Because my grandmother taught me something. You don't flip the table because you're angry. You flip it when you're ready. Camille breathed out through her nose. She did not agree with waiting, but she trusted Nia. She had watched this woman build a multi-billion-dollar company through the same patience, the same silence, the same terrifying calm. Across the room, Graham Nolan had been watching from the edge of the bar. He had not heard everything Preston said, but he saw the napkin. He saw the wiping. He saw the reactions. People leaning away from Preston instead of toward him. The woman in red, leaving. The bartender freezing. Something inside Graham began sinking. He walked quickly toward Preston and grabbed his arm. Preston, stop talking. Right now. What's wrong with you? I said stop. I still haven't identified Elevance Global's chief executive, and half the room is watching you behave like a fool. Can you please keep this professional for one evening? Preston pulled his arm free. He straightened his cufflinks sharply. I'm always professional. Graham looked at him. Really looked. After 8 years working together, something close to disgust rose in him for the first time. Nia had moved onto the terrace. Cool night air touched her face. Central Park spread below in darkness and green shadow. The gala became muffled behind the glass doors. Out there, she could hear the city, distant car horns, traffic, the low mechanical pulse of Manhattan. She placed both hands on the cold railing. Her fingers tightened. Camille stood beside her quietly. Nia took out her phone, dialed a number. When the person answered, she spoke softly. It's me. Pull the complete Vance development file. Financials, contracts, pending proposals. Board structure. I want everything. She ended the call. Camille watched her. What are you going to do? Nia did not answer immediately. She looked toward the skyline. 3 visible towers depended on Elevance infrastructure systems. Hospitals in the Bronx used patents developed by her company. A major water treatment facility in Queens existed partly because of a grant from her foundation. The city around her carried pieces of her work everywhere. Most people would never know. And inside the ballroom, Preston Vance had just wiped his hand after touching hers. Nia turned toward the glass doors. Through them, She could see Preston laughing with bourbon in his hand, completely comfortable. Camille waited. Nia finally spoke. "I'm going back inside." "Why?" "Because I want him to see my face one more time. I want him to remember it later." Nia walked back into the gala. She did not avoid Preston. She passed near his group, close enough for him to notice the faint scent of jasmine. She looked directly at him, then smiled. Not warmly, not politely. The kind of smile that says, "I know something you don't." Preston felt it. A small cold sensation moved through his chest. He could not explain it. For one moment, the bourbon did not taste quite as good. He ignored the feeling. He should not have. Later, Preston sat inside his corner office high above Manhattan. His feet rested on the desk, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. He scrolled through business news as though nothing in the world had changed. The gala had seemed entertaining to him. Good bourbon, important people, attention, exactly the kind of night he enjoyed. Then his office door opened hard. Graham Nolan stood there. No knock, no greeting. A tablet gripped in both hands. His face looked exhausted. His tie was crooked. His hair was uncombed. His eyes belonged to someone who had spent hours staring at information he wished he had never found. "We need to talk. Right now." Preston did not look up. "Graham, whatever it is, send an email." "Preston, put the phone down." Something in Graham's voice stopped him. It was not anger. It was fear. Preston slowly set the phone aside. Graham crossed the office and placed the tablet face up on the desk. On the screen was a Forbes profile. A woman's face. Dark skin. Calm eyes. The faintest smile. Nia Whitmore, founder and chief executive. Elevance Global. Personal net worth more than $4.2 billion. Preston stared. At first, his mind refused to connect the photograph with the woman from the bar. Then the details aligned. Navy dress, plain bracelet, mineral water, the calm expression. His face drained. He reached for his tie, loosened it. Suddenly the office felt too warm. He grabbed a glass of water and drank all of it. His hand shook. The empty glass rattled when he set it down. That was her, the woman at the bar. Graham's voice was flat. Yes, that was her. The woman you shook hands with. The woman whose touch you wiped off with a napkin. The woman you mocked. The woman whose company is the strongest remaining possibility for keeping us out of bankruptcy. Preston stood, then sat, then stood again. He began pacing behind the desk. She probably didn't hear everything. I wasn't that loud. She was across the room. Preston. Graham cut him off. The bartender heard you. The server heard you. The woman in the red dress heard you. Half the people near the bar heard you. And Nia Whitmore was close enough to hear every word. Preston stopped moving. He placed both hands on the desk. His eyes returned to the tablet, to the calm face. Now the expression looked different. Not passive, patient. The patience of someone who already understood how much power she held. What do I do? Preston's voice had changed. The confidence was gone. I don't know. Graham answered honestly. I genuinely don't know. Then Preston moved with desperate speed. He called Elevance Global. He asked for Nia. A receptionist answered politely. I'm sorry, Mr. Vance. Miss Whitmore is unavailable. When can I speak to her? I'm not able to provide that information. Would you like to leave a message? He left one, then another, then another. Each message became more urgent. At first, professional. I would appreciate an opportunity to discuss our potential partnership. Then cautious. Miss Whitmore, I believe there may have been a misunderstanding at the gala. Then desperate. Please, just a few minutes. No response. He sent emails. Professional language gave way to pleading. Nothing came back. He contacted mutual acquaintances, called in old favors, asked business partners to intervene. One by one, they refused. Sorry, Preston, I can't help with this. One contact was more direct. After what happened at that gala, I'm not attaching my name to yours. Preston sent flowers to Elevance Global headquarters. An enormous arrangement of white orchids and lilies. Hundreds of dollars. The kind of gift someone sends when words have failed. The flowers came back. Unopened. Attached was a small note from Camille Caldwell. Miss Whitmore appreciates the gesture, but cannot accept gifts from prospective partners. Prospective partners. The phrase chilled him. Business language. Clean. Distant. Professional. Nia was not arguing with him. She was not insulting him. She was handling him, and Preston understood that was worse. Finally, he did what desperate people do when every door closes. He showed up. Preston Vance walked into the lobby of Elevance Global Headquarters in Midtown Manhattan. Glass walls, polished floors, employees moving with quiet focus. He approached the front desk, straightened his tie, put on the smile that had opened doors for him his entire life. Preston Vance. Vance Development Corporation. I'm here to see Miss Whitmore. The security officer checked the system, typed, checked again. I'm sorry, sir. You're not on the approved visitor list. There must be a mistake. Please call her office. If your name isn't on the list, I cannot grant access. Company policy. I'll wait. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Preston stood there. Bright sunlight came through the glass. Employees passed him. Engineers, researchers, executives, all part of an empire built by the woman he had treated as if she did not belong in the same room. He began imagining that everyone knew. Maybe some did, maybe none did. Either way, his skin burned with humiliation. He left. Then the video appeared. Someone at the gala had been recording a personal video near the bar. In the background, clearly visible, was Preston shaking Nia's hand, pulling away, reaching for a napkin, slowly wiping his palm. And then the microphone captured his voice. God, I can still feel it on my skin. The clip spread rapidly. Millions of people watched, then millions more. It moved from one platform to another. News networks picked it up. The footage was devastating because it showed more than words. It showed Preston's face, the theatrical disgust, the deliberate wiping, the desire to make sure other people saw. And in the background stood Nia, still, calm, composed. Her dignity made his behavior look even smaller. People quickly discovered who she was. Then the story exploded. The black woman. Preston Vance had publicly humiliated was a self-made billionaire worth thousands of times more than he was. The irony became irresistible to the public. But the real point was much deeper. News outlets called Vance Development constantly. Preston's public relations team released a statement claiming that his comments had been taken out of context and did not reflect his values or the values of the company. The response was immediate. Taken out of context? People asked. The context is exactly the problem. Preston's face appeared everywhere. Television, phones, news bites, group chats. He became one of the most publicly criticized business figures in the country, and public embarrassment was only the beginning. Existing clients began pulling away from Vance Development, quietly at first. A phone call, an email. We're pausing our partnership pending review. We need to revisit the terms of our agreement. Corporate language meaning the same thing. We do not want our name next to yours. 2 mid-sized contracts were frozen. A regional bank contacted the company about its revolving credit line. The kind of call companies receive when lenders begin wondering whether they will be repaid. Graham delivered the news inside Preston's office. The door was closed. The blinds were drawn. Cold coffee sat untouched. 2 clients paused their work. The bank is asking questions, and the board has called an emergency meeting. Preston sat behind his desk. He looked smaller than he had days earlier. What does the board want? Graham looked at him for a long moment. They want to discuss your future. Your future inside the company your family built. Silence filled the office. For weeks, Nia returned none of Preston's calls. No emails. No meetings. No messages. Nothing. Then his phone finally rang. Camille Caldwell was on the other end. Mr. Vance, Miss Whitmore will meet with you at her office. Please be on time. The call ended. No small talk. No warmth. Only the meeting. Preston spent the night rehearsing apologies. He tried different suits, different phrases, different versions of remorse. By the time he arrived at Elevance Global, the words no longer sounded real even to him. This time, security allowed him through. The building looked different, not because anything had physically changed, because now Preston understood what he was seeing. Research divisions, global infrastructure planning, government contracts, operations across 14 countries. Every elevator stop reminded him that Elevance Global was larger than anything he had ever controlled. Camille met him on the executive floor. She did not smile. She did not offer her hand. "Follow me." They moved through quiet corridors, glass offices, researchers, engineers, digital screens showing Elevance operations around the world. Vance Development, the business his family had built over generations, could fit inside a small fraction of this company. Camille stopped outside a simple oak door. No oversized gold nameplate. No theatrical display of status. "She's inside." Preston opened the door. The office surprised him. Modest. Bookshelves. A few plants near the window. The faint smell of jasmine. The same scent he remembered from the gala. On the desk sat a framed photograph of an older black woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Odessa Whitmore. Beside it was the Time magazine cover. The quiet Titan. Nia sat behind the desk. She did not stand. She did not extend her hand. She looked at Preston with the calm precision of a surgeon studying an X-ray. "Sit." He sat immediately. Nia allowed the silence to remain. Long enough for Preston to hear his own breathing. Long enough for the room to become uncomfortable. Then she spoke. Calm, no shouting. No visible anger. Something stronger. Certainty. "You shook my hand. Then you wiped your hand clean. You said you could still feel my touch on your skin. You suggested I was a charity guest. You asked who allowed me inside. You told a racist story about a black contractor because you wanted men around you to laugh." Every sentence landed slowly. Preston opened his mouth. "Miss Whitmore, I am deeply sorry. It was a terrible mistake. I didn't know who you were." Nia leaned forward slightly. "That's the problem, Mr. Vance. You didn't know who I was, and that's exactly why you behaved that way. If I had been a white woman in a designer gown and expensive diamonds, you wouldn't have needed my name before treating me with courtesy. You would have smiled. You would have offered me a drink. But I was a black woman in a simple dress. So you decided I was nothing." Preston had no answer. Nia opened a folder on her desk. Inside were financial reports from Vance Development. Profit and loss statements filled with red numbers. Debt ratios moving in the wrong direction. Contract losses. Projections that looked less like growth plans and more like a countdown. "I was considering your company for a $200 million infrastructure contract before the gala. Your chief financial officer submitted a strong proposal. Graham Nolan is talented." She paused. A capable man working for the wrong leader. Then Nia closed the folder. The sound was soft, final. "I'm no longer considering the proposal." Preston broke. Not gradually, all at once. His eyes reddened. His voice shook. "Miss Whitmore, please, I'm begging you. One chance. Just one. Thousands of jobs depend on this agreement. Families, mortgages, children in school. You can't. Those employees will be fine." Nia's voice remained steady. "Elevance has a workforce transition program. If Vance Development fails, we will extend opportunities to every qualified employee we can responsibly place. They are not the reason I should do business with you, and you are not someone I will partner with. Not now. Not ever." Preston sat there, hands gripping the armrests, eyes wet. Nia looked at him one final time. "You wanted to know who I was. Now you know." Preston left the office like a man walking away from his own funeral. His legs moved, but he barely felt them. Camille opened the door without speaking. The elevator ride down seemed endless. When the lobby doors opened, sunlight hit his face. Then camera flashes followed. Reporters waited outside. "Mr. Vance, can you comment on the gala video? Is it true Elevance Global has ended negotiations? Did Nia Whitmore accept your apology?" Preston raised one hand toward his face and moved quickly toward his car. He climbed inside. The door closed. Through tinted glass, he could still see cameras flashing. This was his life now. At Vance Development, the atmosphere had changed completely. Conversations stopped when Preston entered a hallway. Employees avoided eye contact. Doors closed faster. Graham waited inside the boardroom. He was not alone. 6 board members sat around a long mahogany table. No coffee, no water, no friendly conversation. Only serious faces. The board chairman, Douglas Pemberton, had known Preston's father for 40 years. He spoke first. "Preston, we've reviewed the video, the media coverage, the loss of the Elevance partnership, and your conduct over the last several years." Preston tried to interrupt. Douglas raised one hand. The board voted unanimously. "You are being removed as Chief Executive of Vance Development Corporation effective immediately. Graham Nolan will serve as Interim Chief Executive." Preston stared at him. "This is my family's company. My father built. Your father built a reputation." Douglas interrupted. "You destroyed it in one night." The room stayed silent. Preston looked around the table. 6 people. Nobody looked away. He stood, then walked out without another word. Later, Preston released a public apology video from his home office. No suit, no tie, soft lighting, carefully prepared language. "I sincerely apologize to Miss Whitmore and to anyone hurt by my words. Those comments do not reflect who I am." The public rejected it almost immediately. People pointed out that the video from the gala showed exactly how he behaved when he believed the person in front of him had no power. The apology spread widely. Not because people believed it, because they did not. The fallout continued. Companies considering partnerships with Vance Development publicly withdrew. Statements referred to values misalignment. The Sterling Foundation permanently revoked Preston's invitation to future events and issued a formal statement supporting Nia. Other major gala organizations followed. Business publications ran side-by-side profiles. Nia Whitmore, scholarship student, self-made billionaire. Quiet philanthropist. Preston Vance, inherited influence, shrinking company. Public disgrace. One headline summarized the contrast: humility versus hubris. A tale of 2 leaders. Then Preston's personal life began collapsing. His phone stopped ringing. Not business calls. Those had already changed. Personal calls, old friends, golf partners, college acquaintances. People who once answered immediately began taking days. Then they stopped answering entirely. His country club placed his membership under review. The language was polite. The message was not. "You are no longer welcome here." Then Preston returned home and found a suitcase near the entrance. His wife stood in the kitchen holding car keys. "I've made excuses for you for 22 years. I'm done." She filed for separation. For the first time in his life, Preston Vance began learning what it felt like to enter rooms and feel erased. The same feeling he had tried to impose on Nia with one napkin and a few cruel words. But the story did not end with Preston losing his title, his relationships, or his reputation. Because the viral video opened a door. Behind that door were years of stories that had been buried. It began with a few calls, then more, then a flood. Investigative journalist Rebecca Townsend began looking deeper into Vance Development. While much of the internet focused on memes and outrage, Rebecca did what she was trained to do. She investigated. Her first major article carried a simple message. The napkin was only the beginning. Inside Vance Development's culture of discrimination. The article was devastating. 12 former employees spoke publicly. Names, faces, specific experiences. They described a workplace shaped by prejudice, not subtle misunderstandings, repeated patterns. A black project manager named Angela Cross told her story. She had worked at Vance Development for 9 years. 9 years of excellent performance reviews. 9 years of arriving early and staying late. 9 years of watching white colleagues with less experience receive promotions over her. 6 times. Every time a senior position opened, I applied. Every time, someone with less experience got it. One person had been there only 2 years. One did not even have a degree. I have a master's degree from Columbia. Angela paused during the interview. Then she described a conversation with Preston. He told me clients preferred a certain look for senior roles. I asked what he meant. He smiled and walked away. Then came Miguel Estrada, a Latino subcontractor who had worked with Vance Development on 3 commercial projects. His invoices were repeatedly delayed, sometimes for months. Whenever he complained, he heard the same explanation. Processing issue. White subcontractors working on the same projects were paid much faster. I almost lost my business, Miguel said. I had employees waiting for paychecks. I had to take out a personal loan to cover payroll. Every time I called, I heard the same answer. It's in the system. Years of that. Then came the story that hit many readers hardest. Charlene Banks, a young black woman who had once worked as an executive assistant. During her first days on the job, Preston called her into his office. He looked at her braids, her gold earrings, her patterned blouse, then told her to dress less ethnic for client meetings. Those were his exact words. Less ethnic. Charlene asked what that meant. Preston answered, "You know what it means. Fix it, or find another job." She lasted only a few months. Then she left. No complaint, no lawsuit. She told almost nobody. I was 23. I didn't know I had options. I thought that was just how workplaces were. Rebecca's investigation included internal emails, memos, performance notes, documents that supported the stories. One email from Preston to a department leader said, "Let's keep the front office clean." You know what I mean? The article spread widely. Then the lawsuits began. 12 former employees filed a class action discrimination lawsuit against Vance Development Corporation. The complaint contained hundreds of pages, documented incidents, internal communications, witness statements. More plaintiffs joined, then more. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission opened a formal investigation. Federal investigators arrived with subpoenas. Files were removed. Hard drives were copied. The lobby Preston once crossed like a king now felt like a place under permanent examination. Preston was personally named in multiple individual lawsuits. His attorneys were costing him tens of thousands of dollars every week. They urged him to settle. Write the checks. End the cases. Move on. The plaintiffs refused to treat money as the only point. "We're not here only for money," Angela Cross told reporters. "We want someone to say out loud under oath that what happened was wrong. We want consequences." A federal judge allowed the case to proceed. Her written opinion described the evidence as deeply troubling, systemic and suggestive of a culture created from the top down. From the top down. That meant Preston. As litigation continued, parts of his wealth disappeared. The Manhattan penthouse was sold. The vacation home in the Hamptons was sold. The art collection his wife had spent 15 years building was auctioned. Preston Vance was being stripped of the world that had once insulated him from consequences. And everyone was watching. The trial lasted 11 days. Former employees filled the courtroom with testimony. Angela Cross spoke for 40 minutes. Charlene Banks spoke for 20. Miguel Estrada brought old invoices, physical paper, yellowed at the edges, documents showing delayed payments and repeated patterns. Preston eventually took the stand. His attorneys had prepared him carefully. Hours of coaching, questions rehearsed. Answers practice. It did not save him. Under cross-examination, he contradicted himself. He denied writing emails carrying his signature. He claimed he could not remember conversations described consistently by multiple witnesses. He called the napkin incident a misunderstanding. Then the video played, full screen, full sound, in a silent courtroom. God, I can still feel it on my skin. Preston closed his eyes. The jury did not. The verdict found the company responsible across the discrimination claims presented. Vance Development Corporation was ordered to pay $38 million in damages to the plaintiffs. Preston was personally fined $2,400,000 and barred from holding a corporate leadership position for 10 years. 10 years. Longer than some employees had waited for opportunities they deserved. Preston stood motionless while the decision was read. His attorneys whispered beside him. He barely reacted. He stared forward. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded around Angela Cross. Tears moved down her face. Her voice remained strong. This isn't only about Vance Development. It's about every person told to dress less ethnic. Every person whose invoice was delayed because of a last name. Every person treated like something that needed to be wiped away. Today, the system finally said what happened was wrong. And it always was. Nia Whitmore did not attend the trial. Not one day. She watched the verdict from her office. Door closed, blinds partly drawn. When she heard the decision, she did not cheer. She did not call reporters. She did not celebrate Preston's fall. She touched Odessa's bracelet, held it between two fingers, closed her eyes. Then she picked up her phone and called her chief operating officer. The Vance transition list. How many employees have we processed? 340. All placed. Good. Nia ended the call. Then looked at her grandmother's photograph. A promise made. A promise kept. Nia continued leading Elevance Global. The company later reached a valuation of $82 billion. Forbes moved her higher on its annual rankings. She did not celebrate the ranking. Those things had never mattered much to her. She went back to work. But she did create something new. The Odessa Whitmore Foundation. A non-profit providing full scholarships for first-generation college students from rural communities across the South. Communities like the one Odessa came from, places rarely seen in national headlines unless something had gone wrong. The first group included 48 students from 12 states. Nia attended their orientation. No press conference. No cameras invited by her. No grand entrance. She sat quietly in the back row and watched students walk across the stage. For the first time in this entire story, Nia Whitmore cried. She still drove the same 5-year-old sport utility vehicle, still made her own coffee, still wore the bracelet. Some things never changed. Some things should not. Preston Vance eventually lived in a rented 2-bedroom condominium in New Jersey. Street parking, a long distance from the penthouse, a long distance from the corner office. He remained barred from corporate leadership for years. He tried to reinvent himself, hired a publicist, started a blog about second chances, presented himself as a reformed advocate for workplace inclusion. The public did not accept it easily. The blog disappeared after a few months. His wife never returned. The separation became a divorce. The country club never restored his membership. Many of the people who once laughed at his jokes stopped answering calls. His name became a cautionary example in business ethics discussions, not the legacy his family expected. Graham Nolan stayed with the company. As interim chief executive, he led Vance Development through a painful restructuring. The business survived. Smaller, leaner, humbled. Graham added a permanent diversity and inclusion commitment to the company charter. Not only because regulators expected change, because he had personally watched what happened when leadership allowed prejudice to go unchallenged. The people Preston hurt also moved forward. Angela Cross, the project manager, passed over 6 times, became vice president of operations at a Fortune 500 company. She received the title she had earned years earlier, just not from the people who should have recognized her first. Miguel Estrada rebuilt his contracting business. It grew to 22 employees. He created one payment rule he was proud of. Every subcontractor gets paid within 15 days. No excuses, no invented processing problems. Charlene Banks returned to school, earned a Master of Business Administration degree, then created a non-profit helping young professionals of color navigate workplace discrimination. She called it Fix It, a reference to the words Preston had thrown at her. Fix it, or find another job. Charlene did fix it, just not the way he meant. And that brings us back to the napkin. One gesture, a hand pulled away. A cloth napkin, a few seconds. It looked small, but it was never really about the napkin. The napkin revealed what was already inside Preston. A hierarchy, a belief that some people mattered more than others. A habit of judging worth before knowing anything about the person standing in front of him. He did not think he was revealing himself. He thought he was revealing something about Nia. He was wrong. He was revealing himself. That is why the story matters. Not because a wealthy man insulted an even wealthier woman and lost. That would be too simple. The deeper question is, what would have happened if Nia had actually been who Preston assumed she was? What if she had been a member of the staff? What if she had been someone's guest? What if she had been an ordinary woman in a simple dress with no famous company and no billions behind her name? Would the room have cared? Would anyone have stepped in? Would Preston have apologized? Would the story ever have reached a courtroom? That is the part worth sitting with. Nia received justice partly because she had power, money, influence, lawyers, a company strong enough to survive any attempt to intimidate her. Most people who experience humiliation do not have those things. Charlene did not. She left. Angela kept applying and kept being passed over. Miguel borrowed money to pay employees while invoices sat unpaid. For years, their stories remained quieter because they did not have the same power Nia had. That does not make their pain smaller. It makes our responsibility larger. Respect should never depend on discovering that the person in front of you is powerful. Dignity should not arrive after a title is revealed. Kindness should not be something we offer only when we think there may be consequences for withholding it. Nia was worthy of respect before Preston knew her name, before he knew about Elevance Global, before he knew about $60 billion, before he knew about $4.2 billion. She was worthy of respect because she was a human being. The same was true for Gerald the janitor. The same was true for the server carrying the napkin. The same was true for Angela, Miguel, Charlene, every person whose name never appears in a magazine. Every person whose bank balance never impresses a room. That is the real measure of character. How do we treat people when we believe they cannot help us? How do we speak when we think nobody powerful is listening? What jokes do we laugh at when we think there will be no consequences? What do we do when someone beside us crosses a line? Do we look at our shoes? Do we check our phone? Do we leave quietly? Or do we say something? The people around Preston at the gala knew something was wrong. You could see it in their faces. They felt it. Some walked away. Some looked down. Some stayed silent. Graham finally told Preston to stop, but only after the damage had already grown. Camille wanted action immediately. Nia chose patience. Different people made different choices, and each choice mattered. Silence is not always approval. Sometimes silence comes from fear, shock, uncertainty, the need to keep a job, the worry that speaking will make things worse. Those fears are human, but silence still has consequences. Sometimes the person being humiliated remembers not only the one who hurt them, they remember everyone who watched. That does not mean we all need to become heroes in every difficult situation. Courage does not always look dramatic. Sometimes courage is one calm sentence. That's not appropriate. Please stop. She belongs here. Don't speak to him that way. I heard what you said. Sometimes courage is documenting what happened. Sometimes it is supporting the person afterward. Sometimes it is refusing to laugh. Sometimes it is reporting a pattern instead of pretending the incident was isolated. Small choices can protect dignity, and small acts of cruelty can reveal something much larger. Nia's response also teaches something important. She had enough power to destroy Preston immediately. She could have humiliated him at the gala. She could have announced her identity in front of everyone. She could have shouted, threatened, made a spectacle. She did not. She waited. She gathered information. She looked at the business, the contracts, the employees, the structure. When Preston's company later began failing, she created a transition plan for qualified workers. That matters, because justice is strongest when it separates accountability from revenge. Preston needed consequences. His company needed reform. Victims needed recognition. But thousands of employees did not deserve to lose everything because their leader had failed morally. Nia understood the difference. She did not protect Preston. She protected people who had done nothing wrong. That is a deeper form of strength. Power is not only the ability to punish. Power is the ability to choose what not to destroy. Forgiveness, if it ever comes, does not erase responsibility. Second chances do not mean pretending the first harm never happened. And accountability does not require hatred. People can face consequences and still be seen as human. Institutions can admit failure and still rebuild. Individuals who are hurt can move forward without allowing the person who hurt them to control the rest of their lives. Angela moved forward. Miguel moved forward. Charlene moved forward. Nia moved forward. Not because what happened became acceptable, because they refused to let someone else's prejudice define the limits of their future. Maybe that is the most important lesson Odessa gave Nia. Don't show your cards too early was never really about manipulation. It was about knowing your own value before the room recognizes it. It was about patience, self-control, not allowing disrespect to force you into becoming someone you do not want to be. Nia did not need Preston to understand her worth. His opinion could not reduce it. His napkin could not erase it. His laughter could not touch it. And when the truth finally came out, Nia did not become powerful in that moment. She had been powerful the entire time. The only thing that changed was Preston's ability to see it. So think about this. Have you ever been in a room where someone tried to make you feel invisible? Maybe nobody used openly cruel words. Maybe it was quieter. A look, a joke, a chair that suddenly was not available, a promotion that always went somewhere else, an invoice that took longer for you than everyone else, a dress code that seemed to change depending on who was wearing the clothes, a feeling that you had to prove twice as much just to receive half the trust. What did you do? What do you wish someone else in that room had done? Those questions matter because most moments of unfairness never become viral videos. Most never reach court. Most never involve billionaires. They happen quietly. In offices, schools, restaurants, hospitals, banks, construction sites, boardrooms, and homes. The people involved go back to their lives carrying something nobody else can see. That is why everyday kindness matters. That is why fair systems matter. That is why complaints must be taken seriously before a famous person becomes involved. That is why leaders must listen when patterns appear. And that is why each of us should be careful not to confuse appearance with value. Skin color tells you nothing about intelligence. Clothing tells you nothing about character. Money tells you nothing about humanity. Titles tell you nothing about whether someone deserves respect. We all enter rooms carrying stories nobody else can see. Losses, dreams, families, failures, work, sacrifice, fear, hope. The least we can do is begin with dignity. Nia still wore Odessa's bracelet after everything. Not because it was expensive, it was not. Because it carried a reminder. Your value does not come from what the room decides about you, and your character is revealed by what you decide about others. Preston once believed he could look at a black woman in a simple dress and know her place. He was wrong. No one had the right to define her place for her, and no one has the right to define yours. But there is one responsibility we all share. When we enter a room, we can decide whether our presence makes that room more humane or less. We can choose curiosity instead of assumption, respect instead of contempt, courage instead of comfortable silence, responsibility instead of excuses. And when someone is made to feel small, we can choose not to help the room make them disappear. Sometimes one person speaking up changes everything. Sometimes one policy protects hundreds. Sometimes one scholarship changes a family. Sometimes one honest investigation gives old pain a name. And sometimes one quiet woman wearing a simple navy dress and a thin gold bracelet reminds everyone that true power does not need to announce itself. It only needs to know when to stand, when to wait, and when to act. Your worth is not determined by the worst way someone chooses to treat you. It is not measured by their prejudice. It is not reduced by their ignorance. And it does not increase only when they finally discover who you are. You had worth before they saw it. You still have worth if they never do. Carry yourself with dignity. Treat others with dignity. And when you are given a chance to choose between making someone feel smaller or making the room a little more human, choose the second. That choice may never go viral. It may never make headlines, but it still matters. Sometimes it matters more than anything.